Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and we have got a new game mode coming to FPL for the new season. That is confirmed, but there could be a few more changes coming to FPL that I'm sure a lot of us will be excited and enthusiastic about. So in today's video, guys, we're going to go through some potential changes in FPL. And if you do enjoy this one, please do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get on with it. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to do this in the form of a tier list, and we're going to rank what I think is the most extensive list of potential changes to FPL anyone has ever seen anywhere on the internet. So we're going to go through them all. Anyone from FPL headquarters, if you're watching this video, hopefully you can get some decent ideas, because a lot of these have come from the community. You guys have suggested these to me on Twitter, and we're going to go through some different categories. Let's start off with some chips and put them into some of these categories. So we've got must change, good idea, maybe, bad idea, and will destroy FPL. We're going to be pretty harsh. And we're going to start off with these chips, like I said. I'm going to start you off with the limitless chip, which I actually think could be a pretty decent idea. Some of you guys may have played some other forms of fantasy football. You know, the World Cup Fantasy, for example, had a limitless chip in it. And what we saw with the limitless chip is that it's basically like a free hit, but with unlimited budget. So it's actually quite an insane chip, and basically was like a free hit chip on steroids, and actually really, really fun to use. I actually don't mind that as an idea. I wouldn't mind that coming to FPL. I think FPL could maybe do with a freshen up on some of the chips. Another chip we saw in the World Cup Fantasy was the 12th man chip, which basically added an extra, I guess, player to your roster. You got an extra man instead of playing with 11 men. You get to play with a 12th man, but this 12th man you could, of course, pick independently, and that player could be from any club. It could be from any budget. You just got to pick one extra player for that one game we're going in. Again, a pretty fun idea, to be fair. I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. Let's move on to the Power Captain chip next, which I think, again, is a pretty fun idea for a chip. We saw that in the World Cup Fantasy. I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty nice, and I feel like it could add a bit of chaos factor without it being like just random. I mean, you could still use this chip fairly strategically, and the way Power Captain chips work is that when you play it, the player who scores the most points in your team will automatically be captain. So say you captain Erling Haaland, but he only scores, 2 points for some reason. Yet you get some random player like, I don't know, Tyrone Mings scores a random 18-pointer. Well, the captaincy will automatically be assigned to Tyrone Mings. So that could work really well in some double game weeks. So it would cause chaos, but it would still be a really, really a nice chip that you could kind of use strategically. The all-out attack chip was an old chip. A lot of people were saying maybe we should bring it back. Some of you guys who played FPL a long time ago will already know what this is, but basically it was a chip that allowed you for one game week only to use a 2-5-3 formation. So 5 midfielders and 3 forwards, but only 2 defenders for one game week only. I think that was a bit of a boring chip, to be honest. It's not really a chip you can use tactically. Defenders score as many points as forwards and midfielders a lot of the time anyway. So I think that chip kind of died a death, and it was replaced by the free hit chip, which I think is the better chip, to be fair. So don't think we should be bringing that one back. And another suggestion, a 2 captains chip, which has not been done before, but basically allows you to have 2 captains in one game week. So rather than having a captain and a vice captain, you just have 2 captains. And I do think this is not the greatest chip. I think it's just a bit of a boring chip, to be honest. It would be less powerful than a triple captain chip, technically, if you think about it. So yeah, not really feeling that one. Don't really like that one for a chip, but there is some other ideas aside from chips that we do need to be thinking about. And I want to talk a little bit about point scoring. So here are some suggestions for some point scoring. So some people have suggested less points for penalty goals. I don't mind this as a potential rule change. If we drop penalty goal points to, I don't know, 3 points or something like that, it's okay. If that came into the game, I wouldn't hate it, but it wouldn't. I don't think it would necessarily really improve the game at all. Less points for penalty assists, on the other hand. Oh, I don't think I like that. You know what? I don't think I like that. I think that's going to be a bad idea, to be honest. I just feel like you need to reward these tricky, dribbly wingers and stuff. Assists don't get you many points anyway, so it's not like it's going to make a huge difference. Whereas penalty goals, it's like there's a lot of luck involved there. Winning a penalty is less lucky than having to happening to be the penalty taker in a team. I don't know. Less points for penalty goals I can kind of accept. Less points for penalty assists, I don't know. It seems too harsh. It seems a little bit too harsh. We've got some other potential rule changes here. Let's put in bonus points rework. Not really a huge fan of this one. To the point, I feel like it will destroy FPL. And I know a lot of people want the bonus point system to be reworked and changed, but I think that's mostly because people don't understand how the bonus point system works. The bonus point system is super objective, and that's why I actually think it shouldn't change at all. It really does reward players for things like, you know, for tackles or interceptions and all of this stuff, and it's done like very specifically. If you do this, you get this point. If you do this, you get this point. Now, I know a lot of people get upset when they pick a striker who scores 2 goals, but they only get 1 bonus point, and you'll say, no, why are they not getting 3 bonus points? But it's probably because they missed a couple of really big chances, and the bonus points system works really well to reward players on their on-field performance. It's not perfect, but it is objective. So I feel like if we start messing around with it and making it too, you know, objective, so, oh, this player was the man of the match, he looked really good, but he hasn't actually put up the numbers, then we get in all kinds of trouble and will make the bonus point system far more controversial than it is already. So don't like this change. I think we need to keep it the way it is. A scoring change I think could work, however, is all goals being worth the same points. And I don't mean in the same way as I just spoke about penalties. What I mean is that no matter what position you are on the field, your goals are worth the same points. So if a forward scores a goal, it's worth the same amount of points as if a defender scores a goal. You know, just round it up to, I don't know, like what, 5 points per goal. No matter who you are, no matter where you play on the pitch, everyone's goal is worth 5 points. And particularly with kind of the modern, you know, formations where wingers are so heavily involved and they're classified as midfielders, we see the defenders a lot more attacking than they were when the FPL rules were originally kind of written. It could be time to make this change and actually make all goals worth the same. I don't know, what do you guys think about that? How would you feel about that one? I know it's very satisfying when your defender scores a goal, but at the same time, a lot of wingers who are goal-scoring wingers are getting more points than forwards, you know, for scoring the same amount of points. I don't know. I feel like all goals could maybe be worth the same. I'd be absolutely fine with that one. I've got another one that I don't mind as well. 2 clean sheet points per half. I know a lot of people are kind of worried that defenders, you know, they get subbed off before 60 minutes and they don't get the full 4 clean sheet points. And that's really frustrating in kind of the modern game. Again, we've got more substitutions now happening in games. And these substitutions are taking place earlier on in games than when the FPL rules were originally written. So maybe it's time for a change there to kind of make up for the fact that, you know, we are seeing a lot more substitutions than before. So you would get, I don't know, 2 points for getting to half time with your clean sheet, and then if you want to get your other 2 clean sheet points, you've got to make it to 60 minutes to get the full 4 clean sheet points. Something like that. I think it would be pretty good. Points for tackles, I don't mind this. It's okay. I know people have been asking for this for a while. Points for interceptions, points for tackles, anything like that. I think it's an okay rule that could maybe come into place. You know, 1 point for every 3 tackles or something like that may bring central defensive midfielders into the game a little bit more, give them a little bit more valuable for those tackling midfielders, I guess. Points for man of the match, I'm going to put this in bad idea. I think man of the match or player of the match is just so objective. It changes from, you know, broadcaster to broadcaster. Who is the player of the match? How do we decide who that is? Like one you know, country, the commentators might say one player is player of the match, and in another country someone else, and that could cause controversy there. Overall though, I don't think it's a terrible idea. It won't destroy FPL, but I think it would be quite controversial, particularly if different people have different opinions on who is the player of the match. Anything that is not objective, I think probably doesn't have a place in FPL, to be fair. Let's put this next one in. Not really sure I like this. Half points for auto subs. I feel like maybe, does that destroy FPL? Potentially. Some people have kind of suggested that, you know, they get really frustrated when, you know, people get lucky players off the bench. And maybe if you get lucky and your player comes from the bench into the starting 11, then they should get half points. But I feel like that's just such a crucial part of FPL. And the whole point in having a strong bench or a bench at all is to be able to reward you if you have got, you know, players missing from your starting 11, you can still get a few points off the bench if you've invested in that bench and if you've selected your bench players wisely. So I feel like that could be a good thing. And I guess this final one, 1.5 times points per vice captain. So your captain gets 2 times points, your vice captain gets 1.5 times points. I don't know. I kind of feel like that repurposes the whole point of a vice captain. The vice captain is meant to be your backup captain, not like another captain. But yeah, I think I'm going to put that in bad idea. Let's talk about the deadline, guys, here. So lots of different suggestions as to when the deadline should be in FPL. Some people say move the deadline to kickoff. I don't mind that. I think that could be an okay idea. I don't really think it solves too many problems, though. I think the issue with the deadline is that people don't want people to have access to early team news. And one way to combat that is to just give, you know, everyone has guaranteed early team news, because you can make, you know, you can make changes to your team all the way up till the kickoff of the first game of the game week. I think that would work fine for that purpose, but it doesn't help people in different time zones. If you know, deadline or the first kickoff of the first game is at 3 a.m. in your local time, then you're going to be at a real disadvantage there, because you're not going to have access to that guaranteed information. So it kind of works both ways. Not super sure I like it. Some people say deadline 2 hours before kickoff. I think, you know, it doesn't really fix the problem. If we can get early team news 1.5 hours before the kickoff for the first game, we can get it 2 hours before as well. We see team leaks 3, 4 hours, 5 hours sometimes in advance of the kickoff. So at this point, you know, where do you set the limit? Do you just keep going and going and going, or do you do this other suggestion that has been made, deadline 24 hours before kickoff, which I just think is ridiculous? Like, who is like, you know, when you're making your FPL team, you want to kind of at least take it to the same day. You know, you at least want to finalize your changes on the same day as the kickoff, like a whole day before. I don't know. That just goes against the foundations of FPL, I think. So not sure I like that one, particularly if it's like, you know, in the middle of the night. Where your time zone is, where the deadline is. If it's 24 hours, then you could be genuinely making your transfers, like, I don't know, like 36 hours before the first game even kicks off. That is too much. No way. Don't like that one. What I do like is player-based deadlines. I think that's a good idea. Now, this is something that's been used in other fantasy games, whether that's football or, you know, American football as well. I think that it uses it in this, maybe some other sports as well, where basically your deadline is defined per player. So you can make as many changes to any players as long as that player hasn't played. So, for example, if you have Erling Haaland playing at 12:30, and then you've got Marcus Rashford playing at 3 o'clock. If you pass 12:30, you can no longer make any changes to Erling Haaland. If you've captained him, you've captained him. If you've got him in your team and you want to transfer him out, too late. As soon as the player kicks off, you can't make the change. However, after Erling Haaland has kicked off at 12:30, Rashford doesn't play till 3 p.m. So you can still make changes to Rashford. If you've still got the vice captain like floating about on a player who hasn't played yet, you can move the vice captain to Rashford. If you want to make an extra transfer and you decide you want to remove Rashford because Rashford hasn't played yet, you could transfer him out or substitute him out for another player who hasn't played. So player-based deadlines, as long as the player hasn't kicked off their game yet, you can make a change to them, whether that's a substitution, a captaincy, a transfer, whatever. I'm not going to explain that kind of idea in too much detail, but it works really well in other fantasy games. I think it could work really well in FPL as well. I think that's probably the best way of combating this idea that people think the current deadline system is unfair. I think this would be the most fair way of changing it. Next up, let's have a look at some potential rule changes. Pick only 2 players per team. Hate it. Doesn't give you enough variety and fun in terms of those big teams, which I know we like to pick from. Can't captain a player 2 game weeks in a row. I don't mind it. It's okay. It would combat kind of the idea of perma-captains. Like, I know people want to captain Erling Haaland every single game week. It would make people think and, you know, change their captain about a bit. But at the same time, it makes the game quite difficult. And if you forget deadlines and stuff like that, you know, this could make things difficult. 2 free transfers per week would be lovely, wouldn't it? But I think that would be too much for the game. I think it would destroy it. Performance-based price changes. So this would be, rather than prices changing in FPL, you know, players go up and down in price. Rather than it changing based on supply and demand, well, it's just demand really, how many people are buying and selling a player, it will be based on their performances and their point scoring. I don't really particularly like the idea. It could work potentially, but I don't love it. Players price changing once per game week, I think that could work in a way, because it would mean you don't have to make early transfers if you don't want to, because players just would only change price once the new game week kicks off, and then all prices will be updated, and then nothing would change again until the next deadline. Then all players' price would change according to how much they should have gone up and down. Some players will go up 0.3 basically within the blink of an eye. Some players will go down 0.1 or 0.2 within the blink of an eye, but it would only happen once per game week, which would prevent us panicking and trying to make early transfers. On the other hand, the reason why I don't love this idea is that I do think that taking a risk and going in on an early transfer, even though they could get injured later down in the week, taking that risk based on the price change, I feel like that should have a little bit of reward. You know, if you're going to take a risk, there should also be a reward there. So, yeah, actually don't mind that one too much. 100% profit from sales. So if you're selling a player and they've gone up in price, you will sell them at, you know, their actual selling price. Whereas currently, you only can bank 50% of the profit made on a sale of a player who you brought into your team. If you don't understand how the prices work, that's going to sound so confusing, but a lot of you guys will. But yeah, don't think that's a good idea. You could just basically create a team that is worth like 115 million by the end. It's just way too much money. If you can bank that much profit, it just would not be sustainable, I don't think. Extended score review window. I'm going to put this in my first must change, and that is down to the Solly March situation. Now, Solly March, last season, you guys may remember, scored a goal, but it was credited as a Jack Harrison own goal. Now, after that happened, everyone who is anyone, every single outlet, statistics, recording, you know, place, Opsa, whatever. Everyone said, yeah, okay, we know now. Even Jack Harrison himself, even Solly March himself said, you know, this was a Solly March goal. But in FPL, it was originally credited as a Harrison own goal. Now, the problem was, because there is an arbitrary window in FPL where they can't correct a mistake, and it's only something like an hour or two after the final, the full-time whistle of the final game on the day in which that game took place. Just the most random, convoluted rule ever. It doesn't really make sense. I think it should be extended, you know, right the way until the following deadline, you know. I think we could really keep this so, you know, if FPL gets it wrong, if it makes a mistake, they have a decent amount of time, you know, days perhaps, to correct that mistake, rather than saying, well, I don't know, we made a mistake, but it's been 2 hours since we made the mistake, so we're not really going to fix it now. 2 hours is nothing. So, yeah, extend that score review window. I think that must change. I think that's very easy and would help a lot going forward if there's any other mistakes in FPL, that they can correct them and give us the fair points that we deserve when we captain Solly March. But we won't talk about that anymore. Next up, roll free plus transfers. Kind of like that idea, and I think that would help in getting people to stick around in FPL for longer, because, you know, sometimes people miss a game week and kind of give up on FPL if they miss a game week or two. But if you could roll an additional transfer, or maybe even more transfers than that, then I would encourage people to stick around and play more FPL, and it wouldn't be a season ruiner if you missed a deadline. And I think that would be absolutely fine. Don't mind rolling the additional transfers. I think it could be pretty fun and would reward people who plan well in advance as well, with lots of extra transfers to use. Wingers count as forwards. I feel like that would destroy FPL. I don't like this one at all, because imagine, like, if wingers count as forward, if a Salah and a Heung-min Son and a Saka and a Martinelli, all of these players counted as forwards, and you can only pick 3 of them. I don't know, guys. I don't know about that. That means your whole midfield would just be full of, like, central midfielders and defensive midfielders, which wouldn't be very fun at all, really, would it? So, don't think that would be a very fun idea. I think this is another pretty bad idea. CDM position. I know people like the idea of rewarding CDMs, but think about it. If you are forced to pick a CDM in your FPL team, where's the fun in that? So you've got defenders, you've got to play at least one CDM, you've got to play, I don't know, like 3 or 4 other midfielders. Like, I don't know, it doesn't really quite sit right with me. Maybe this could be kind of implemented in the future, depending on how football and the Premier League develops. But right now, I feel like, yeah, no, it's kind of a little bit random to just add a random CDM position. Fair enough, reward CDMs, but keep them as midfielders. Don't add an additional position for them. Not sure about that one, really, to be fair. In-play substitutions, it's worked in other games. I'm not going to explain that too much, but it's basically similar to player-based deadlines, where you can substitute players as long as they haven't played yet. Wait, actually, no, you can substitute players in if they haven't played yet, but you can substitute players out who have played. So, yeah, if you've played other fantasy games, you'll know what that is. Similar to in-play captaincy switches. I think they're, in general, decent ideas. I think they've worked in the past. They could be a little bit complicated for some people. So that's maybe the only bad side about them. But they've worked in other fantasy games. They work really well. Go look that up if you are really interested in it. Dead spots in team. I think that's a bad idea. What I mean by that is, rather than having to pick you know, a full bench of players, you can pick a dead spot instead that maybe costs you, instead of like picking a 4 million defender, you can pick a 3 or 3.5 million dead spot. So it means you don't have a player, you are missing a player from your bench, but it costs slightly less. So you save a little bit of money, but you sacrifice a player on your bench. It's an okay idea, but I don't really like it that much, to be honest. Low minutes players auto subbing off. I think this is just people, again, upset that sometimes their player only comes on for the last 20 minutes of the game. That's part of FPL, I'm afraid, so I wouldn't want to auto-sub players off just because they only play 20 minutes. Also, what if they played 20 minutes and scored a goal? How do you judge it? Would you just want players to auto-sub off if they score low amount of points? That's part of FPL. Sometimes your players are going to score low points. Don't really like this idea. And finally, guys, let's have a look at some, you know, general quality of life updates that I think could work really well. Now, first of all, hide ownership. So you cannot see the ownership of any player. I guess that could be okay in a way. But people are just going to get around it anyway. You know, there's so many stats, like plugins and all kinds of other stuff for FPL. Hiding ownership, all that will do is give an advantage to people who are paying for tools or using tools, which I know that sounds great because we are guys who probably use tools and stuff for FPL. It'll be great for us, but I think it'll just be so unfair on people who don't use tools because, you know, everyone else will be able to see all the ownership and effective ownership. So the one thing I would maybe not mind is if the pre-game week 1 ownership was kind of hidden. But again, like, you know, I feel like we need to let people play FPL the way they want to play. If they want to just pick the popular players, then let them do that. And you can't do that if you hide the ownership. Transparent price changes. I can't really see a reason why this wouldn't be a thing. I think we should be able to understand why players are changing prices in FPL. I think that's good. If players are going to rise in price or is close to rising in price, it should say on the FPL website. There's not really too much of an issue there. I think that's a pretty much dead cert. Digital rewards trophy cabinet. I think it's a good idea. To be honest, I would love this if this came in. It's probably like my #1 thing, my #1 change for FPL. I want to see digital rewards. I want to see a trophy or, you know, maybe some cosmetic items on my FPL screen. Like, you know, you can have like a special kit or, you know, badges next to your name or something like that in FPL. If you kind of, you know, if you finish in the top 10k, or if you know, score 100 points in a game week, you get a little badge, you get a little virtual reward, kind of like we see in all other kinds of games. It seems like it's kind of missing from FPL. I've realised I've written cabinet here as well. Don't know why I've misspelled that, but I did. Finally, 2 more, and I think these are absolute must changes. Better prizes is so essential in FPL, and better servers. No one is going to argue with me on that one. We need to see these changes. We need better servers. We need better prizes. Transparent price changes, I guess I can live without, but I still feel like it's a really good idea. I'm going to drop it down to good idea. An extended score review window. These are the things that must change in FPL. So if you are watching FPL headquarters, make these changes, not the ones towards the bottom of the tier list, but the ones towards the top. They're really, really, really good ideas that the community have come up with and have hyped up and like these ideas. Let's get them done. Guys, that is my final tier list of potential changes to FPL. Let me know if there are any other changes that you think could happen in FPL. And also let me know your favourite change. If you could pick one thing from this list that should change in the world of FPL, what would it be? Pick one change that you think would just be amazing. And make sure you go into the comments and liking the ones that you relate to as well. But there we go, guys. That is the tier list. So there we have it, guys. Just a fun little video in the off-season to talk about some potential changes to FPL. Nothing too serious, nothing too heavy. A little bit of fun for those of you guys who miss FPL, and I know there's a lot of you out there. We'll do at least one more video. I've got one more pre-season or off-season kind of video idea that I can put out. So I'm going to probably put that out next week. But aside from that, guys, go check out the other off-season content. If you miss FPL as much as I do, make sure you like and subscribing. And aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.